Sports conversation the way it ought to be. This is Jeff Allen Sports Talk.
And it is great once again to get a media spotlight edition up on the tee, and ready to do the honors with me once again are my guys, Adam Eaton and Eric Lopez. Gentlemen, how are y'all this evening?
Jeff, I am doing peachy. Thanks for having us back again. Always exciting to talk some sports media with you guys.
Nothing like doing this show while watching the first four underway of the March Madness.
Yes, right. With Spiro Ditas and Jim Sparnarkle on the call.
You're missing the TGL playoffs, Elo? I'm surprised.
Well, tough. I can flip back and forth.
I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, and UCF baseball against Stetson happening too.
That's a lot of stuff to have on. I mean, that's a lot of stuff,
I got to keep those three TVs full. What can I tell you? So we, of course, always get together around March Madness time to talk about the broadcasts and things like that. Before we get to that, however, I want to touch on a couple of bits of business that happened over the past week. And first of all, I will say the first one was, okay, so we know how important the SEC is now to ESPN because Dan Schulman, Jay Billis normally called the ACC tournament. They were moved to the marquee that is now the SEC. So that goes to tell you everything you need to know about that relationship if you didn't know already. Adam, your take on that?
Yeah, I think some of that, though, is just on how strong the SEC has been this year, Jeff. They have 14 teams in the tournament. That's a record number of teams from one conference in the NCAA tournament. So I think some of that speaks to just how good the SEC is this year. And if we're being candid, the ACC had a bit of a down year. Obviously, Duke is the headliner, but Carolina obviously barely scraping in some people's eyes, shouldn't even be in the tournament. So a pretty down year, I think, overall. Virginia fell off the map after Tony Bennett left. So I think it's more indicative of the SEC kind of taking over from a basketball standpoint. I know the three of us follow UCF pretty closely in the Big 12, and I think we all thought, hey, that's the power conference in college basketball. And I got to hand it to Greg Sankey and whoever's lining his pockets because he pulled the Lee Corso and said, not so fast, my friend, because the SEC had a banner year this year in basketball. And so I think that just speaks to, I think that speaks to that conference. Now, I would say this, and I don't know what Elo and Jeff, you think about this. If the situation had been different, the Big 12 had been the power conference, would they have sent Schulman and Billis to that? That I don't know. I think it's because it's the SEC, Jeff, and makes that decision easier. I don't know if they do that if it's the Big 12, but I think it's also indicative of just how dominant the SEC was in college basketball this season.
Well, for those that may not be aware, historically, Schulman and Billis have been doing the ACC championship tournament. As Adam pointed out, the ACC this year was not very good. And I think between that and the SEC having this historic year, I think everybody realized, and I've been told that Schulman Billis crew has a say as far as what they want to do. And I was tipped on this a few weeks back that they were going to go to the SEC, which caused a rippling effect because you also had College Game Day do the show from the SEC. Normally they do it from the ACC. And the irony of this conversation is ESPN prior to this had been criticized of being overly pro ACC basketball, that they always go to Duke and Carolina. They even got criticism earlier this year because they went to Duke Carolina over other games in particular. So I think there was a Big 12 game that some people thought they should have gone to instead. So I actually agreed with the move. The SEC is the story of the year. In their defense, those first few days of that tournament was incredible. And you saw the rippling effect because Tom Hart and Bradshaw, who normally do the SEC session, got moved to the American to do the championship tournament. And then Kevin Brown and John Crispin got moved to the ACC tournament. So it caused a rippling effect. I will say this. I like the fact that the Big 12, Adam mentioned, they did have a studio show. And it was kind of interesting what they did. They had Kevin Connors, I believe, was the host at the Big 12. And they would rotate the analysts between Fran Fraschilla, Sean Farnham, who hopped in there after the West Coast Conference, and then Brandon Messier, I believe, was the third guy. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, which set up the weird three-man crew that I was kind of thrown off by when I think it was the UCF Kansas game where they went three-man booth. There you also had obviously John Shambi, you had Mark Neely, you had
I think you had
Roxy Bernstein, right? Like, I mean, they had a
King McClure, I think, was the other
forgettable
analyst.
King McClure.
King McClure. My bad.
And
Thank you for correcting me.
And they had one of the Marcus twins. I don't know if it was Marcus or Markeith. One of the Marcus twins was also, or the Morris twins rather, was also on set with them. I think it was Marcus because I think Markeith still plays in the NBA.
Interesting. I didn't. But I'm glad they did a studio show there. SEC had their studio show, obviously with Game Day, and then the SEC Network stuff, and then the ACC they used the ACC Network crew to kind of promote that. And Dick Vitale got to call the ACC championship game with Dave O'Brien and Corey Alexander. So I actually didn't mind the change overall. I think it fit perfectly with the world. I just wish college ESPN would be more flexible when it comes to the college basketball game day, because they would go to games and you're just shaking your head like, what are you doing there? So I actually didn't mind it.
Well, you are also a prognosticator of sorts, Elo. As you mentioned, Dick Vitale, his return to calling tournament basketball. He came back for the end of the regular season. And of course, he worked the ACC championship game, which, he's worked that for forever, that tournament, so to speak. So, we've talked about Dick Vitale many times on this show, and we're, thankful he's beating cancer first and foremost, because that's a wonderful story there. And we know he's not there for the analyst role there. He's the cheerleader. He's the guy who's going to pump everybody up and be gung-ho and everything like that. And I will put him in the same category as Lee Corso. You can call your retirement whenever you want, barring any further health issues. So it is kind of nice to see that in that regard. And I think now that I've lowered my expectations on what I think we should get from Dickie V, I'm not as, I don't have that angst anymore. Elo?
Well, they kind of used him as a pitch count. They didn't, he did like one game a week. He only did the ACC title game, obviously to protect his voice, is my guess is what they did. I was surprised he didn't do the Duke Carolina game, the semifinal game. I mean, that would have been, what a way that could have been if he decided. I don't think he is going to retire after this, but if he was like to call his last game, calling a Duke Carolina game would have been very fitting. Instead, he did the ACC title game there. I think he's going to be on a pitch count moving forward. I don't think the days of him doing multiple games a week are over.
And I think he's in a 3-man booth, you think, too?
Yes, I do, too. I do think that's part of it, to protect himself, protect the voice. And I thought it wasn't an accident that they put him in with Dave O'Brien, who's worked with him before for years. And I think Corey Alexander, a guy that's not a big name and has no, but he's not a big ego guy either. So he's perfectly fine sharing that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that is the move moving forward. I do think had Shulman and Billis stayed and done the ACC, Vitale would have done the SEC championship game with Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes, for example. So I do think moving forward, I think they're going to be extra careful with him. And the reason to do that is if something happens, if he's not feeling well, whatever, you don't have to change everything. You just basically go from a 3-man to a 2-man, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I know a lot of people out there are always get a little annoyed at his shtick, right? And for years we've talked about it on this particular program. His shtick can wear a little thin at times, right? And some of the hyperbole that he has. I'll say this though, you can't find anybody else who maybe is passionate about his college basketball as Dick Vitale, right? You can't argue or dispute the passion he has for the sport, and it does feel different when he's involved, right? But similar to Lee Corso, as you mentioned, Jeff, it's always tough to see somebody when they lose their fastball a little bit, right? And same thing with Lee Corso, where the spirit is willing, but the body isn't able, or there's something that just doesn't allow them to kind of be what they are. But I don't know how to say this without sounding cruel, but I think you nailed it, Jeff. Like Dick Vitale now in spots feels like a big moment, feels like a big game, right? If he's only going to come out a couple of times a year, to Elo's point, maybe once a month, whatever that looks like, it feels more like a big time event. So it's almost, I know we're going to talk later on about a certain ESPN personality who just signed a huge contract. He's everywhere. And at some point you're going to get sick of him. And that was Vitale for college basketball. Well, now that he's only around in pockets, the nostalgia comes back and the memories come back and the voice comes back and you say, that's what I remember for college basketball. So I think the days of him being on Sports Center at, at 6, 7, 9, and 10 are done. I think the days of him being on set at the bracketology breakdown, those are over. I think to Elo's point, you find the right moments. If it's a coach that he's covered for a bunch of years, if it's a program that's been important for, I can see him doing a Calipari game somewhere down the road, right? Something along those lines, and make the moment feel big. But to your point, definitely grateful that he's had the opportunity to come back, and hopefully he continues good health. But it's always tough to see a legend, someone that you've grown up watching and listening, lose their fastball a little bit. But it does feel right to have him somewhere involved in college basketball.
Very genuine guy, by the way. I met him when I was a student at UCF a couple decades ago, and he was on campus at UCF at the bookstore at UCF signing autographs because he had a book that just came out. And I bought the book and he signed it and I talked to him and he was very passionate then. That was back when he was working with Mike Patrick. And we were talking about, hey, man, I love the ACC, talking about the ACC basketball. And he was like, man, Wake Forest has got a big game this week. Mike and I are going to do it. We're looking for that's genuine. I think people think that's a shtick. That's actually him genuinely. He genuinely has passion for for the sport. He has genuine passion for the sport. He's not a negative guy. He can't. He just refuses to go that route. And it probably helped him go through all of this. I don't know if a lot of people would have been able to get through what he's been going through the last few years.
Yeah. And I don't know if I told you guys this story before, but I came across Dick Vitale years ago, speaking at a function that Pat Williams had. And I don't know, Eric, if he did this with you, but like before I got to sit down and interview with him, he was speaking in normal voice, not Dick Vitale voice. Yeah, and it freaked me out.
Well, he asked. I remember when I did the book autograph. He asked for my name. Like, what's your name? He's like, okay. So he asked me like what I was doing and stuff. Yes.
Yeah, and so we chit chat a little bit. I start the interview, and of course, hey, he's all Dickie Vitale, at that point. And so it's kind of
the on-air funny personality. It's
yes.
the on-air personality that you have to have when the lights go on. Otherwise, you don't succeed in you do. It's like the volume goes up. It's a great the way I would describe it. Now that you bring it up, that is true. That is very sincere. But he enjoys that stuff. And yes. Like I said, I'm just glad he's doing okay there. Adam, how was your meeting with Dick?
No meeting with Dick, but I will tell you this. I think he harkens back to a time where, ESPN, a lot of other shows now, I mean, your analysts, right? Your personalities have to cover multiple things, right? You have to have an opinion on everything. Dick's always just been the college basketball guy. He's never tried to be the NBA guy, even though he coached in the NBA. He's never tried to be anything other than college basketball guy. And there's a lot of people now, you have to know 16 different sports, and you're on Countdown and Game Day and Post Game and Recap and Sports Center. And Dick Vitale always just did college basketball. I don't know how often we're going to see that going forward. Even Jay Billis, who's kind of preceded him as the number one analyst for ESPN, he's doing NBA games now. You're seeing more and more guys. Kirk Herbstreit, right? The college football kind of voice for ESPN, dabbles in the NFL now. So I don't know if you're going to see somebody like a Vitale who only does that genre of work. I think
for one network.
Absolutely
true. Yeah.
Like even in the sport, like think about it. Bill Raftery, for example, does games for CBS and FS and Fox.
And he did ESPN
back in the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Billis did the NCAA tournament at CBS, part of a trade, which was kind of a cool story that he shared recently on an interview where he talked about the reason he was able to do games on the NCAA tournament on CBS was a trade that CBS and ESPN did, where ESPN gave them Jay Billis to work with Dick Enberg, and the trade-off was CBS would give them more highlights from the tournament. They wouldn't limit ESPN as far as highlights on SportsCenter. So, he's a one of a kind. He's different. It's a different landscape. I don't think we'll ever see anybody like that generally drew the interest. Like, you got to go see this guy because it's entertaining to hear what he has to say. I mean, there was a documentary they did of Vitale, I think about a year ago or so, that was pretty good. I recommend, that kind of showed his story of his career as a broadcaster.
Yeah, and I tell you what, it does harken back to a time, that Jay Billis Dick Enberg was a nice little partnership there too. And Dick Enberg obviously had called March Madness for many years at NBC and CBS. All right, let's kind of delve into the March Madness and of course the broadcast aspects of that. And of course, Selection Sunday was obviously different with the passing of Greg Gumbel back over the holidays. He had missed last year, as we have well documented, And of course, CBS did the tribute to him at the start of the show. Really liked how they did it. They kept it short and sweet, but they did it honorably, I thought. What do you think, Adam?
I gotta tell you, I wasn't prepared. I mean, I guess I knew it was coming. I wasn't prepared for that, right? Because it almost, and shame on me, like it almost didn't click to me that he wasn't on the show until a little bit beforehand, when I was like, oh, this is going to be different. And I almost wasn't prepared for that off the top, hearing his voice and all the stuff that CBS did. And it's a fitting tribute. And it's funny, I found myself kind of, I don't want to say missing it, but it just felt like I should be hearing his voice right now, and kind of the stark reality that that's not what's going to happen anymore. But these are always tough, right? Obviously, there's probably a million different ways you want to go about memorializing somebody who is that important to your broadcast team. And I thought CBS did a really nice job. But to your point, keeping it classy, keeping it important. But I also think a lot of times, and I don't know Greg Gumbel. I don't know if Elo ever had a book signed by him or not, but I don't know Greg Gumbel. But he strikes me as somebody who wouldn't want all of this fanfare and pomp and circumstance about himself. He strikes me as a guy who would be like, okay, fine, move on to the A block. So I think CBS probably did it in the memory of him, but also in the way that they probably would have thought he would have wanted and preferred. But it hit me differently. I guess I wasn't prepared for what they did, and it sort of took me kind of back at my chair for a second. And it was a cool moment, but it was the realization that show as we know it is going to change forever now. And that's obviously a bummer for those of us who grew up listening to him tell us who was going to be the 16th seed in the South. It's not going to be the same without him.
I agree. The one good thing is, Zucker has kind of been their guy for most of the, during regular seasons anyway, and been doing CBS Sports Network college basketball coverage as well, which I watch a lot of that. I actually enjoy the CBS Sports Network coverage of college basketball, their studio shows versus, for example, ESPN and things like that. So I was glad to see that Zucker got the chair. I think that was appropriate. From what I understand, and he said this in an interview, there are going to be more Greg Gumbel tributes as this tournament goes on, especially
tomorrow at noon or Thursday at noon, rather.
Okay. So they're going to do tributes, and I think it's great, and they'll handle it well. It was unique. It was different. Greg, I always like Greg as the host, because there was always that kind of a coolness there where he laid low. Like if there, he actually, to his credit, would make Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Clark Kellogg work. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't need Ernie necessarily to make that work, which was a credit to him on that. He can make everybody shine there. He doesn't say much. He's very efficient in his words. So certainly it was weird. You're right. It was weird. It was, to be honest, it was weirder last year. Remember, he didn't do it last year. We didn't know why at the time. Now we do. To me, it was more stranger last year. At least Zucker being a familiar, I thought was the right move for CBS. So I'm glad they gave him that opportunity.
Yeah, and Zucker is a studio guy only. That's all he does is studio work, and that's what.
Not many of those he left either.
Yeah. No, I thought he handled that very, very well, and I think in the other aspects that so Ernie will lead off on Thursday, and then I think Zucker will lead off Friday and some of the weekend stuff there. So I think it'll be more Ernie. It's probably going to be like a 60-40 Ernie Zucker split, probably, if I had to guess. But the good news is they are in good hands. And I do agree with you, Eric. The CBS coverage of college basketball is miles better. Their production is better. They have, to me, I think they have better analysts. And they're just a lot more smooth as far as that goes.
Well, part of it, too, is, ESPN has dove into the women's basketball side. And I feel at times the men's get shoved aside, and they go all in because ESPN has the exclusive rights to the women's NCAA tournament. So I feel like the men's get kind of put to the side, whereas, as you mentioned, CBS, that's their baby. That's the thing they're going to push for, whether it's on linear CBS or on CBS Sports Network. They're going to go all in, and they have great people. Gary Parrish is very good at covering the sport. You got Steve Lapis who does the games there with Andrew Cantelot. So they got a lot of depth there that I'm with you there, Adam, and Jeff. I do like the CBS way of covering the basketball. Not necessarily Turner, though, but we'll get to that.
Well, speaking of Turner, so they release the broadcast assignments. Really no big changes as far as that goes on Game Site. really the only addition to the team. Jalen Rose, he's doing the first 4 on True TV tonight at the desk, and then he will be is part of a play-by-play package in the first round. So give me your take on Jalen Rose being added to the mix.
I hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Why? Why do we need Jalen Rose? Why? Did he blow you away in the pro style? Like, I don't know, guys. You tell me. I was floored when I heard this.
I don't need Jalen Rose calling games. I don't recall him doing a lot of that at ESPN. I don't know that he called a ton of games. I don't need him doing that. You want to put him at the desk, and I know there's a lot of different desks that people have to occupy, and there's a lot of different programming, right? So if you need to rotate guys, and Jalen Rose is perfectly fine. He's a name in college basketball. He did college basketball for a while at ESPN. He was part of that pregame show. They were on site. It was him and Jay Williams, Seth Greenberg, right? So I saw that part, but he's paired up with an interesting grouping. Lisa Byington, Robbie Hummel, and Jalen Rose. Have those 3 people ever been in the same room at the same time before? I highly doubt it.
Yeah,
I highly doubt it. And we're about to see this happen with Andy Katz, by the way, as the sideline guy. That one feels weird to me. If you want to shove him on a desk, when you've got all these different analysts going on, right? Like, fine. I mean, I can deal with Barkley. I can deal with Jalen Rose, but I just don't understand the need to put him in a booth. That one. Am I wrong? Do either of you remember him calling games ever at ESPN or being in an actual booth? I always remember him being a studio guy. Jalen Rose.
Yeah, so Rose, they tried him this year on Peacock. There was a UCLA hosting Michigan game or something like that where he did color. And then like a few years back, he did an ESPN game with Bill Simmons as Mike Tirico way back in the day. But outside of that, no, he has been mainly a studio guy. And that's one thing. If you want to say, hey, you want to have him on in the studio during the NCAA tournament, he is part of the Fab Five. That makes sense. But to throw him in there randomly on a broadcast with people they've never worked with before, like Robbie Hummel's freaking good, really good. He doesn't need another analyst guy. Why is he stuck with Jalen? And why is there stuck? They're going with Lisa. I just, why? I don't understand, guys. It just agitates me. It's just overthinking the room here, in my view.
Yeah. So I know he's done a couple spots too on Turner's NBA stuff. And I was wondering if they were kind of doing that preemptively in case, Barkley were to move on or something like that. They were trying out another guy to be one of the bananas there. So, he
fits at the desk. Like, I think he fits at the desk. If you have Michigan games on or something, right, and he's at the desk, like, sure, fine. You throw back to that, you show the baggy shorts photos, right? Like, everyone's gonna have a good time. I don't see him in that booth specifically. I don't know of another booth where you could put him. Maybe Brad Nessler and Brendan Haywood. Maybe the other spot you put him at, but I mean, it's almost just like you're, to borrow a Kenny Dillingham, you're ramming a square peg into a round hole for no apparent reason, and I don't quite understand that. I mean, I think Jalen's perfectly fine. It just doesn't seem like the right mix for him. I also wonder too. It's funny. I was listening to the Dan Le Batard show this weekend. He had a kind of a special on Sunday night talking about the tournament, and they had Stan Van Gundy on. And if you're not familiar with Le Batard's shtick, he typically likes to zig when others zag. So he's asking more silly questions. And he said, hey, tell me about this 16 seed. Stan, what do you know about him? And Stan Van Gundy was like, I don't know anything. I haven't seen college basketball all year long, but I have 4 days now to watch a ton of tape. I'm going to watch tape of every team I potentially could cover, like 4 or 5 other games. And by Thursday at noon, I'll know everything you need to know. And then he said, quote, basketball is basketball. And while I don't disagree with that premise, it's also the same thing applies with Jalen Rose. Like, I kind of lend the credibility to guys who are covering the sport week in and week out versus guys who kind of dip in. Now, I think Stan Van Gundy is perfectly intelligent and smart, and I like listening to Stan Van Gundy. But I thought it was interesting that he's probably honest to a fault, that he's like, I couldn't tell you the single name of a person on this team, but by Thursday I'll know it. And that just, I don't know, man. I guess maybe I'm just being nostalgic.
But it agitates college basketball fans. It does.
Yeah.
It agitates them, the fact that here we are, the biggest moment in the sport, and all these guys come in and jump on the bandwagon and kind of just for a few weeks to get the extra check. And it'll be interesting to see how it'll look like next year when there is no NBA on TNT. Is that they're going to put Barkley and those guys as well in the studio. It drives me nuts that you go with Jalen Rose. Like, why not just go make a deal with ESPN and get like a Fran Fraschilla, for example, or whoever. Like you could create great broadcast teams for this tournament, except egos are involved. Like I like Jim Jackson, that's fine. But like why Brandon Haywood somehow keeps coming back, which is kind of wild to me. But I just don't get some of the decisions here when it comes to the tournament.
Yeah. Just a quick offside question. So who do you think is the best of the analysts from that March Madness roster? I mean, I think you could make a case for Lapis, you know.
Well, him and Catalong have the chemistry, right? To me, they're the new version of Ian Eagle and Jim Sparnarkle. Remember them? Those two were good pairing together until Ian got promoted. I like Spiro and Sparnarkle. I'm glad, I'm kind of bummed out for Sparnarkle that he's kind of cut out of the Sweet 16 round. He basically can only do the first couple of rounds and then they cut him out. So that's kind of a bummer for him. Again, the problem is you got to feed all these mouths, and it seems like the way they want to set it up is they try to balance it out between CBS and Turner guys. The other weird, just to keep going on the Jalen Rose thing, which drives me nuts. He's the second Fab Five guy to work for Turner in the tournament behind Chris Webber. Like, what are we doing? Like, why? Again, I just don't understand.
Paging Jimmy King. King. I also like the Harlan Bonner Van Gundy. I know I just kind of ragged on Van Gundy, but I always like the Harlan Bonner. I think Van Gundy's a good analyst too. Like I find him interesting. He's not going to sugarcoat stuff. He tells it like it is. And I do think he'll do his homework. But I've always liked the Harlan Bonner Van Gundy. I think, Elo, you were at this, so correct me if I'm wrong. You were at the game at the Magic Arena where the video is out there now, where Harlan puts his arms out and basically makes everybody else be quiet, so the moment kind of hits, and Van Gundy and Bonner's face is kind of their mouths are open on what they saw. Like that's a good team. I like the way that team comes together. So I could do Harlan and Bonner and Van Gundy as well.
I agree. Harlan has worked with Bonner for many years. And then remember, it used to be Reggie Miller. And I used to mock it on the show about how Reggie, Bonner would be yelling at Reggie and all that. They seem to have figured it out with Stan Van. I agree with you. That's a great crew there. By the way, Andy Katz, I like Andy Katz in the sideline. I actually met Andy Katz when he was doing the tournament at Disney. Thank you. I was waiting. He was doing the tournament at Disney that UCF was involved that year. And Andy Katz was the sideline reporter before he moved on from ESPN.
There you go, man. Yeah, another Elo name drop. We need to get a sponsor for that, I think, at some point. All right. Wanted to bring up a topic in relation to something it feels like there's more chatter lately about expanding the tournament, which I totally would be disgusted if they do that. But there's probably a possibility of this happening because we know money talks, and that's going to push the needle at some point somewhere. So here's the big question. If they expand the tournament to 72, 76 teams to start with, does Turner and CBS want that extra inventory? Do they feel like that's worth it to them? Or is this an opportunity for an ESPN or a Fox to get their hands into the big dance? Or, because greed is really, really big, I could also see streaming services like Netflix and Amazon bidding and overpaying immensely for first round games in an expanded tournament. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the tournament's deal doesn't expire until 2032, I believe. So it's got a while. Now, if they expand, is there language in there where they could opt out or not? It's a very good question. My answer is no. I think they would want to keep it, especially Turner now that it just lost the NBA after this year. What else you got? What are you going to do? Carry Mountain West basketball or football? I don't even know what they carry. But I mean, I learned about a new show the other day from Adam about where the Crown tournament
Breakfast
was unveiled. Breakfast ball. What the heck is that? I still don't. It's wild to me. But so no, I think CBS and Turner, I think, would like to keep this relationship going. The problem is we don't know what the landscape looks like in 2032. Trust me, ESPN has wanted to get the piece of the tournament for a long time, hasn't been able to get it. I don't think it matters if it's 72 or 76. If anything, they might want that. That might also, because look at the first four right now. It's being aired on True Television. Well, you can make a full day out of it if you expand to 72 or 76, which is what I think is going to happen. So basically all it means is that the tournament would start on Tuesday, Wednesday. You have a full day of games on Tuesday, Wednesday. that they could either put on True TV or they could put it on, one of the TBS, TNT, whatever, or they could sell it to a network, and kind of like what ESPN did with a piece of the college football playoff. So I think that's what would happen.
I have to couch all of my thoughts here and come back to the main point of this is the NCAA, and they'll find a way screwed up if they have to, right? So I have to keep that in my back pocket as I think about this. The naive Adam wants to tell you it'd be great if it's under one roof, it's all a couple different channels. As it is now, we all kind of every year the same joke comes off where you have to figure out where True TV is on your channel lineup because the only time of year you watch it as a sports fan, right? But you think about guys like, it depends on who's in the ear of the NCAA. Think about somebody like Brett Yormark, who's the commissioner of the Big 12. He's talked about breaking up basketball in his own conference, selling that as a separate entity. I got to believe, Jeff, and again, I know contracts are contracts and what's in there, I don't know. But I got to believe that someone says, hey, Amazon will pay X for this, or Netflix will pay X for this, right? And there's going to be a dollar figure attached to that. And will the NCAA say, whoa, wait a minute, that's a pretty attractive figure there. I might have to look at that, right? So I'd like it all under one roof because I hate having to go through like, oh, is that on Amazon? Is that on Netflix? It's the NFL playoffs are kind of like that for me. Like, which one is this on now? And I have to have 7 of them to get all of my NFL playoffs.
Wait till you get to baseball. Wait till we get to baseball next year.
Luckily, I don't have to worry about that. But I don't want to have to do that in March Madness. I like to turn on CBS and TBS and TNT. I'm learning this now. Keep my TV on all day long and just enjoy the games. I don't have to keep flipping back and forth to streaming and cable and online and Peacock and Paramount. I don't want to do all that stuff. But somebody's going to get in the ear of the NCAA and say, wait a minute, we can get X. I got a guy at Amazon who's looking to get into the business. And I think at that point, you said earlier, Jeff, money talks.
Yeah. And Amazon or Netflix or Apple, any of those will pay more for those first games than the entire tournament would be paid for by
absolutely.
Turner and
Yep.
CBS.
Absolutely. Yeah. They absolutely would. And again, then you wonder what's going to happen to the actual, we're just talking about the broadcast side, but what about the quality of the games? Are they going to want to put heavier games on the streamers because they're paying more and the selection process is already screwed up? Yeah. Like what's going to happen there?
Yeah.
I think it just puts more questions into an already muddled and confusing and frustrating process that is just going to drive fans who actually care about college basketball crazy.
I don't think we'll ever get to that point. If anything, the only thing I could see is maybe the playing games maybe get shipped, right? Get sold to, but outside of that, I think the actual tournament will stay. And one of the things is it's kind of perfect right now, the way they have to tournament. They spread it out all day, night. You can watch every game. I'm not one of those weirdos. They're like, oh man, I wish it was like back in the day when they would just join the game at the end when there was something going on. That was a thriller. I'm like, what? Like you can pick whatever game you want now. It's not like back then where you had a score on the bug and you're like, oh wait, is that an upset going on? Oh, wonder what's going on. And then you go to the studio to find out upset going on, and that we've updated that. So no, I don't think it'll ever get to that point. I do think these are I would argue, other than the NFL, this is probably CBS's most important property. Yes. Wouldn't you say?
Yep.
Maybe 100%. You could argue maybe the Masters. I know, Adam, you're into you could argue the Masters, but but that's a 1 weekend thing. Like March Madness is 3 to 4 weeks. I would argue outside of the NFL package, this is the most important property for CBS and for March Madness and for Turner. Now that they're losing the NBA, I would argue this is their most important property, even more so than the NHL.
I would also. This is an opportunity if you're YouTube TV. This is the other time of year you capitalize because you can do the quad box on YouTube TV, right? You can get 4. So you can literally have all 4 games on your screen at the exact same time. I'm sure there's other ways to do that through streaming services and whatnot, right? But if I'm YouTube TV, hopefully I'm blanketing this whole tournament with advertisements telling people, hey, you don't have to switch back and forth. You can put all 4 games on the same window, and to Elo's point, one of them gets close, you click it, and you got that game on full screen too. So hopefully YouTube TV figures that piece out. It's a free piece of advice for the good folks at Google. They're looking to advertise for their services. But I think the other problem we have with this is I was joking earlier about paging Jimmy King. We will be paging Jimmy King because with more games, you need more broadcasters. And so who are we going to roll out of the woodwork at that point? Who's coming? Avery Johnson, come back on down. Like who's coming out?
JJ Watt? JJ Watt? Can we get
who knows? Yeah, maybe he wants to call some sort of a game. I have no idea, but you're going to start getting a plethora of broadcasters that you were going to go, what? That guy? So I can't wait for that.
Okay. So I'm going to name drop here because I learned a fun fact. So earlier this afternoon, I was talking to Tim Brando of Fox Sports.
Look at that.
And I did not know this. So evidently Turner pays 80% of the freight on March Madness versus CBS's 20%. That explains all the NBA guys.
Well, no, not only that, but that explains too. They every other year now they get the Final Four.
Yeah,
that explains a lot. Yeah, because now that does bring up an interesting point. There's been a lot of obviously ownership has changed. That Turner's owned by Discovery. Are they willing to do that similar deal years from now? Who knows? So, 2032 is a long time from now. It's a long time from now. But I definitely think, what they will do is there will always be two partners I don't see one network carrying the entire tournament in the men's side anyway.
Unless ESPN got it. That would
I don't know if
probably be
ESPN would necessarily do the whole thing. Like, I think ESPN would be kind of in a similar boat to the college football player where they'd be willing to share it with a Turner or CBS. I really do think they would be willing because they have so much inventory already. Like, they have the women's tournament too. So I actually think they would be willing to share the package.
Well, we will break it down on a Media Spotlight edition in 2032. I can guarantee you that.
Can't wait. I got it booked right here. Adam, you've spoke.
I'm free on Wednesday. I'm free on Wednesday.
All right, very good.
There you go. All right, so let's shift over to the NBA since we've brought that topic up. Mike Tirico, who will, of course, be NBC's lead analyst for NBA coverage starting next season, getting a little road work in, calling some games on NBC regional networks in Philadelphia and Boston recently. So nice little treat there for the fans of those regional teams. Interesting that he's already preparing and getting his NBA chops back. Although it's probably been a long time since he's called an NBA game. Adam, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, right? I mean, the good on him for getting back out there and getting some reps in. I think Tirico has always been a top-notch broadcaster. He did obviously NBA for a while with ESPN, ABC. So he's hopefully like riding a bike in some respects for him. So, kudos to him. I wonder how many other, big time broadcasters would do something like this. I mean, I'm not trying to say they have big heads, but how many other big time broadcasters would do something like this and go kind of do the circuit, do a couple of games, get some reps and rhythm back into. So I'm looking forward to see what NBC can put together with the NBA. To me, ESPN's coverage is just as stale as all stale can be. In terms of even the game broadcasters, the studio shows. I mean, I find myself not even really wanting to watch basketball on ESPN because I'm like, wait, who's this? Tim Legler? And I can't even really get into certain elements too. So I'm curious what NBC will do overall. But I look good on Tirico, right? I mean, he could have an ego and say, I've done this before. I can figure this out. But I think it's cool that he does stuff like this. I mean, we talked about this in a few shows ago. Everybody's favorite broadcaster, Joe Buck. He went back. I think he did a couple of Cardinals games or something like that on local TV, right? So I think it's kind of fun when you maybe get back to your roots a little bit and get back into kind of a smaller market. Tirico, obviously a Detroit guy, went to Syracuse. So I don't know the connections, with Boston and Philly specifically, but I think it's cool that he did that. I think it shows he's committed to trying to get better and he's not just kind of cashing it in. So I thought it was cool. I'd love to see him on my Heat, even though the Heat sucked this year. But I'd tune in if he did a Heat game with, I don't know, whoever the hell, John Crotty. I'm not even sure who's there anymore.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he might be. I have no idea.
I mean, might as well. They haven't changed. My only question is, how did they work that work? Like, if you're the local guy, how do you feel? Like, you got to give up the chair with a day? Were you already planning to give up the chair to somebody
sick that
anyway?
Day. You have a cough, don't you?
I guess. So that's the only thing I kind of wondered about that. So it was kind of weird, but I get it. By the way, speaking of weird, I'm watching the studio here for the first four in or the playing game. You've got Adam Lefko, who's the host of the Turner Show on Tuesday nights. What's going to happen to him, by the way, next year? I mean, what does he stick around? Like, there's no other NBA to cover. You got Seth Davis, you got Jay Wright, and Jalen Rose. Like, what did those four ever be in the same room before tonight? Do we think? Do we think they've ever been in the same room?
We know Seth and Jay have been at least
2 out of 4.
CBS. Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? So, but look, Adam is 100% right. I would argue right now, the NBA might have the weakest broadcast coverage of all the major sports. To me, I'm still, and I'm never going to get over it. I don't understand why the Van Gundy and Mark Jackson and Bream crew got broken up. I understand Jeff Van Gundy complained about the officiating. He had a point. I don't really understand that, and they have really struggled with that. Doris Burke and Richard Jefferson is the latest. Like, does that get you going? Like, I don't go out of my way to. I think that has impacted the NBA viewership. I think the NBA, they're part of the other problem is ESPN has embraced the let's just trash the NBA guys today compared to the guys of the past, and we're going to smack talk them on topics and debates, which is so bizarre. And I think it's influenced some of the negativity towards the NBA. There's just a lot going on there. But then you got the Turner guys that, they know this is their last year. You got Barkley kind of they kind of get a free pass somehow because they trash the current guys too. Like, they're no different than ESPN. It's a weird situation where you have all these media guys in the sport basically bashing guys because either they don't play enough or they don't do this or they don't do, like, you don't see that in any sport. Like, you don't hear Tony Romo saying, boy, that Dak Prescott, what a bad passer. He's a choker. Nobody says that, like, except in the NBA. And I think that's hurt the coverage. So I am looking forward to maybe some fresh air next year with NBC on board, although Reggie Miller will be a part of that crew. So good Lord, we can't, like, come on. And then Amazon, which apparently will have Ian Eagle and Kevin Harlan. We'll see who they pair them up with. So hopefully next year we have some freshness to the broadcast in the NBA, because it is, you're right, Adam. It is.
Can I ask you both a question? How did we get here with the NBA? How did we get, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, the NBA was the prime product. Everyone loved the NBA, and obviously ratings start to tank off a little bit, right? How did we get here with the NBA where, LeBron is out? I know we're going to talk later on. LeBron's outwardly saying it. You don't want to be the face of the league. It sucks because you get shots taken you all the time. Barkley's taking out Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith are yelling at each other, and, Bob Myers and Draymond Green. Like, how did we get here with the NBA? Like, what happened that you took a league that has a lot of stars and somehow it's become, to Elo's point, borderline unwatchable at times?
I think you can go make a couple of points here. And I think LeBron is part of the problem because LeBron is the drama king. He brings that stuff.
Sure.
And I think that's made some negative outlay with that. The other point being that the guys aren't wrong. The quality of play just doesn't seem to be as good, at least to me.
Oh no, it's the style of play. There's a lot of 3-point shooting going on, the advanced metrics, and guys like Barkley hate it, and they tell you they hate it.
Yeah.
But again, Barkley's kind of a drama king, a king too, though. I mean, how many times is he like, oh, I might retire? Well, maybe I'm going to leave, or maybe I won't go work there. Like, it's over and over again. And my whole point to it is they don't now. The NBA has always been the league that we kind of question. Well, I don't know. Can he win a championship? That's been going on for a long time. But I think, Adam, to answer your question, what changed is this. I think the culture of social media and everything has embraced the whole, like, well, Kevin Durant, the transaction, right? The transaction. Kevin Durant wants to go. He wants to opt out. He wants to get traded. He wants to do this. All these guys, like Jimmy Butler, Adam, we just went through this nonsense with him. And guess what? That's what they're talking about more than that actually what's going on the court. They rather talk about Jimmy Butler's drama with Pat Riley and the Heat than SGA probably winning MVP and can he lead the Thunder to an NBA title.
Well, even people are mad about that, though, because they're saying he's foul baiting every night. He's at the line 30 times. And
it's a very negative tone. Yeah,
it's become just a woe is me league at this point.
And that's why JJ Redick was always mad, right? When he was on the broad because he's like, why is everybody so negative, right? And now he's doing coaching, but like Perkins is that way. That's the hot takery. And again, it's not just ESPN. Everybody says it's ESPN, but it's also Turner. Everybody loves this inside. What the heck was that All-Star Weekend where it was basically like a tribute to like Inside the NBA? They spend more time like putting like a funeral for Inside the NBA, a studio show, than they actually did about what was going on the court. I think it's a bit much. And I think some of these guys think their voices are bigger than it needs to be. And I always follow this rule that I was taught is no matter how your voice is, the product is bigger than you. And the reason they're tuning into you is to want to watch the product. And I feel like these guys are like, F the product. You're here to, guys are here to watch inside the NBA. We're a bigger deal. And people enjoy the hot takery and the riff and the drama.
I thought of a third point too, is the NBA is the only sport where the players control the league. All the other sports are owner controlled. And I think that's got a piece of it to do it. Yeah. Load management, all these kind of things. And, you have to be careful when the players are in the league, they might burn the house down.
I mean, I would say the NBA kind of led the way in that player empowerment movement, right? I think they were kind of the forefront of that. Where NFL is starting to get that a little bit right, but Elo's dead on with something you just said, Elo, which I think is absolutely true. NBA fans like the transaction more than the game, right? They like to hear from Shams more than they like to hear from Eric Spoelstra. Like they want the transaction, they want the news, they want the gossip, they want who's going where more so than they want the games. And that's an interesting place to be in, where the most important thing about your sport is what team somebody may be on next year and how many salary slots you can give up. Not, by the way, you just dropped a game by 50 points. Like you're spot on with the transaction being the headline now in the NBA.
Well, not only that, you have a situation where, there's the perception of, load management, right? That has become the it thing. So now the perception is, if I go to an NBA game, am I going to see my guy play? Like, am I sure? I don't know anymore, right? Used to be, you knew that. That is an issue that I think has become. And then Adam Silver's solution to that is to create an NBA Cup tournament in November. And then you also come up with this little playing 7, 10, 8, 9 playing thing that makes the regular season even more meaningless. Like, why? It's just bizarre what they've kind of done. And the other thing they have is they have a hard time. Guys aren't staying in college, so you don't know who's coming into the NBA that's like you're hooked to this sport. Maybe Cooper Flag could be that guy. We'll see how that goes next year. But they just got to get a freshness. They need some fresh paint coat. And I know this will be controversial. I actually think it would be better off for the NBA if inside the NBA didn't come back. I really do. And the reason I say that is because what are they going to do when they're on ESPN next year? You know what they're going to do? They're just going to make fun of the fact they're on ESPN instead of talking about the game.
It's working for McAfee.
Good point. And we'll hear about Pat McAfee in a little while as well. So how about this? And we're on the NBA. Stephen A versus LeBron. Of course, LeBron calling out Stephen A for evidently trash talking about his kid, Bronny, who does not deserve to be in the NBA. I digress. But here we go. We got this mixing up thing, and I almost hate to say this, kind of rooting for Stephen A in this battle. What do you guys think?
This one frustrated the heck out of me, Jeff. Elo said it earlier. The story is not you. You shouldn't make yourself the story. And Stephen A. Smith allowed himself to be part of the story here by what he says, right? And, fine, he's a hot take artist. He's an opinion maker. I get all that stuff, right? The thing that frustrated me the most is, sure, this wasn't publicized if it were not for a fan shooting a video at the game, right? Somebody got a cell phone video of this and it went wild on the internet. And then the next night or the next morning, Stephen A. Smith tweets, I wasn't going to talk about this. I didn't want to do it, but now I have to. Now I have to address it. And not only did he go on First Take and address it, he then addressed it in his podcast. He was on Gilbert Arenas' podcast. He was on Fox News talking about this. He was on NBA Countdown talking about it. Like, fine, you need to address it one time because you just want to get it out of the way. And he said, my bosses made me. They said, it's the story. I got to talk about this. He went on like 35 other shows and continued to talk about it. So I'm not saying he contrived this, but the reality is he made himself the story where he could have easily downplayed this and said, we're not talking about this. That's a private conversation between two adults, and I'm not doing this. He went on every show he could find and hot take it out there. The LeBron side of it is interesting too, right? Because you said it earlier, Jeff, he's, for somebody who is as popular and famous and wealthy and accomplished as LeBron, he certainly has rabbit ears to this kind of stuff. And I understand his argument may be, well, you're talking about my family. Your family's on the payroll, dude. Like, he's on the team. If Bronny was playing pickup at the park and Stephen A was like, I drove by and saw Bronny, he can't play, that's another story. But he's a paid employee on the same team you're on. He is no different than the 12th man on the Milwaukee Bucks or the Toronto Raptors, which Stephen A. Smith can absolutely talk about as well. Now, I guess the cheap shot is him telling LeBron to go talk to his son and stop all this madness. But again, he's a paid employee on a team. If he was the high school janitor, then yeah, fine. This isn't relevant, but he's talking about the league. You may not like what he says. You may disagree with it, LeBron, but that's his opinion. That's what he's paid to do. I think he made it a bigger story by confronting Stephen A. I think Stephen A., I don't know if you guys remember that old game show, Capture the Flag. He got the flag and he ran with that thing because he realized now I can go to every different podcast and I can become the story here and tell everybody I don't want to be the story. And let's all face it, that's exactly what Stephen A. wants.
I mean, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, that was weird. I didn't know about it until a couple days later, to be honest. I think I was in the middle of like softball games when that was going on or something.
A better place to be, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's confrontations there too, but not as many cameras. I wonder, like, how I still don't even know. Like, did LeBron hear it himself? Was it one of his people telling, "Hey, do you believe what he said about your son?" Like, type of thing. Obviously, the father side of him came out there a little bit when he was probably agitated. But again, nobody got caught in camera. If they didn't get caught in camera, we wouldn't know about it. Yeah, the weird thing. But again, that's another example, Adam. Why are we talking about LeBron, his son? Like, why did Steven bring it up? I remember when he made those. Like, there was no need to bring him up. He chose to bring up the topic, and I think that's where LeBron is coming from. Whether you agree, and I understand what you're saying, Adam. At the end of the day, he's a paid employee. He has a right to be talked about and everything. But I think LeBron's problem was, why are you creating conversations about my son when nobody else is doing it? Why are we talking about that instead of what the Lakers are looking like with Luka Doncic on the court? That's the problem we have right now with the league.
But if you're LeBron, you fell into the trap. This is what Stephen A. wanted you to do. I'm not saying he did this intentionally. I'm not saying he didn't, by the way. He baits LeBron into coming in and confronting him and making the story bigger than it had to be, right? I don't know when that comment was said on air in First Take where he talked about LeBron as a father, I implore you, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what date that was said, right? But was anybody talking about that? 3 days later, that thing would have been out of the news cycle and everyone moves on with their life. It's now back and it's a thing now, and it's being covered more and more and more because LeBron takes the bait and says, "Oh, I'm going to go confront this guy, Stephen A."
Well,
Smith,
did he
right?
take the bait or did LeBron want to instigate that?
And that's a great question. That's
right. I don't know.
Rule it out. Yeah.
Right. Like that.
I can see it both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Right.
can't rule it out.
I mean, that could be where, the wrestling term, we're being worked into a shoot here. So right. Like, who knows what that is? And because really the setup here, we'll find out eventually. The conclusion would be the one-on-one sit-down interview at some point, right? Like, isn't that the end game here for both? Like, Steven were to get him on a one-on-one and LeBron accept, and everybody would tune in for both. That would be cool. I could see that how this ends at some point, maybe in the conference finals or the finals, if the Lakers get that deep. I don't know. It was weird. It was bizarre. But you made a great point, Adam. The NBA guys have ears, and it's not necessarily them listening, but they're people around them listening. That's the problem. It's kind of like when,
they're listening. Yep.
Yeah, people are listening. They tell them, and it's like you're playing you're playing the phone tag type of situation. Did you hear what he said about you? Can you believe he said that about? So that also, I'm sure, played a big role.
Well, and to our larger point earlier on, right? It just goes to show that was a bigger story than whoever played in the game that night. Who were the Lakers playing that? Anybody know? Did they win that game?
That was the Knicks.
Know? Like,
it was the Knicks because Stephen A. was at the game because it was the Knicks because I don't know if you've heard, he's a Knicks fan.
I heard about that. Like, who won the game? Who scored the most points? Like, was it a good game? Like, no one knows. All you know is a confrontation. Right, a transaction took place. I just get frustrated because to me it seems patently obvious that Stephen A. Smith loves himself some Stephen A. Smith, and he wants to be in the story. He wants to be in the news. He wants to be talked about, and so he goes out there, says outlandish things, and LeBron takes the bait and does it. Skip Bayless says stuff about LeBron James pretty much every 17 minutes of his life. I don't think you've ever seen LeBron confront Skip Bayless, right? Now he's going to say again, this is because you brought my son into it, but I understand that it's not cool if I'm a father and I am to say, wait, don't talk about my kid like that. But again, my kid's on the team. Like my kid.
But again, apparently Stephen A. was in center court, and I think LeBron spotted him. You know how it is, Adam, right? Like, like imagine
it was mid game. It was like second quarter. This wasn't like after the game or halftime. It was like after a timeout.
imagine for a second, Adam, your daughter's playing soccer, right? Let's say she turned out to be a star soccer player.
Be great.
Well, then you see Jeff Allen on his show trash your daughter, say, "Oh, she's not a good midfielder at all. She just turns the ball over." I wish her father Adam Eaton would talk to her about discipline. Well, then you run into Jeff Allen in person at a soccer match. You're not going to react about your kid.
So that's an interesting question. I would I'm going to assume it's the Jeff Allen that I know, right? So the Jeff Allen that's staring at me in this Zoom box right here. If it's this Jeff Allen, that's not something Jeff Allen does all the time. So if he was critical of somebody, a player, for something like that, to me, that would be relatively out of Jeff's wheelhouse. He's not one who's going to be flamboyant. He doesn't want to be a part of the story. If it was, instead of Jeff Allen Sports Talk, if it was Jeff Allen's Hot Take Variety Hour, then yes, I may be like, dude, like, let's knock it off a little bit. So I think if it's fair criticism, I think you have to accept that. I guess where the difference here is LeBron saying that wasn't fair criticism. You were not fair to me as a father. You were employing me as a father to do something about my son. That's not what I need. If you want to talk about a player, do that. I guess that's the line in the sand here. But again, if this is Jeff Allen's Hot Take Variety Hour, then sure, I would feel different about it.
Well, it seems like LeBron took it personally because it became personal. It wasn't about like, hey, your son's not good basketball player. It's like, hey, man, you're a lousy parent to your kid. What are you doing this to your kid? Right? That seems, so who knows? And again, the reason I don't think he acknowledged Skip never goes to games, and so who knows? But listen, it worked. We're talking about it now. We're talking about it now.
We took the bait.
I would say this. I'm not I think I took a couple of psychology classes at UCF, so I would not consider myself an expert on this. But
they have a controversial professor I've heard over there. I took
logic tells me typically the reason somebody gets mad about something like that is because they know the person's kind of right. And I wonder if that's part of LeBron's is he kind of knows that. The talk is Bronny shouldn't be in an NBA team. He's not fit for the league. He should be playing the G League. And so you get sensitive about something that when someone says it and you know they're maybe a little bit right. Part of me wonders if that's not what LeBron did here. As I heard that comment, maybe deep down in their truth serum would say he knows that, if Bronny's last name was, Moshkowitz, he probably isn't in the NBA. But because it's James, maybe that's why Bron got upset.
Hey, Adam, be careful. LeBron's other son just committed to Arizona. They play UCF next year, and you're at the game. I'm just saying.
My favorite headline, we're on that real quick. His son just won the state championship at Sierra Canyon in LA. And the headline was Bronny James leads Sierra Canyon to, state title or whatever. And you read the story. He scored like 4 points and had 3 rebounds. He didn't, if that's what's lead you to a title, then God bless your team, by the way. But again, yes, I can't wait to see Bryce, I think his name is, playing for Arizona.
Yeah, well, Adam, we may have to orchestrate a confrontation just to make the story look good.
Or let's rebrand this as the Jeff Allen Hot Take Variety Hour. That could have some legs, gents. I don't know what you guys are doing tomorrow, but episode 1, Jeff's got StreamYard now. We could take this thing to the top.
Oh, there we go. New program.
Can
we add it to the Sunset Work too? And,
we got openings.
Just get your daughter to play soccer at UCF, and you let the criticism begin.
Yeah. So. When I think of LeBron, I forget the name of the comedian on Saturday Night Live who does the Stephen A. impression, but I always
Thompson. I think
you're right there. And it's like whenever they ask him about a certain figure, he always starts, and he would start as LeBron. He's my friend. I guess that's over as far as that goes. All right. Speaking of the 4-letter network. They're going to bail out early on their MLB contract. They have decided, and I love the ploy they did too, and say, the $500 million that you guys want for this, we're going to give you $20. And you good with that? And of course not. They're not going to be good with that, but they're going to be out of the baseball business, it looks like, which is kind of sad in a way because it's been a large part of their legacy for many, many years. But they've been kind of pulling back more and more as time has gone on. And yet this also opens up another door for another streamer, in my opinion. Let's get your guys' take on this.
Not a surprise. I just think baseball, and I think ESPN realized what $500 million. What are you getting really for $500 million? Jeff, you watch baseball like I do a lot during the summer. Nobody's watching the national broadcast in the regular season. You're watching your local broadcast. So if you're not getting exclusivity, I know Sunday night is exclusive, but it's a different landscape. It used to be when I grew up, the Sunday night baseball was a big deal. That was the only time you might see those teams play, things like that. Now you can watch these teams every day. And even baseball tonight, you don't need baseball tonight because the baseball fans going to the MLB network to watch MLB tonight. I mean, the landscape's changed. And so I wasn't surprised. I'm not sure that I agree with MLB's approach to saying that, oh, they hate us. We don't need them. I don't know about all that, but because I'm not really confident in Rob Manfred coming up with a good deal here. But yeah, I think the only thing that surprised me is I thought, well, maybe ESPN would keep it just so they can still have that wild card round. But let's be honest, they've scaled back. They don't do weeknight games very rarely anymore. So they're like, why are we going to spend $500 million on this when we could spend it elsewhere? And I think that's kind of the way both sides went with it. I am very interested to see what happens with this package. Who takes the Sunday night baseball? Who takes the home run derby, for example, on Monday nights? That will be interesting, as well as the wild card round. We'll see what direction they go with. I can give you some predictions if you want, but that's kind of where I think the question now lies. But yeah, I'm not surprised by the landing this and divorce.
NBC was actually an early speculation in relation to that they might want to do Sunday night baseball to have year-round Sunday night programming.
That makes sense. That would make sense if you're NBC. You just did this deal with the NBA that's going to do Sunday nights after. That would make sense if they were to grab Sunday night. I like the package. My question there is, we're going to have Mike Tirico call baseball too and just complete the set? Like, what do we do? Bob Costas, are we calling him out of retirement? Like, but you're right. But one of the interesting issues here is, I would argue that Fox right now has a stranglehold on the play-by-play with Joe Davis, Jason Benetti, who in particular I think has had a great year overall. Great year. And Adam Amin. So if it is NBC, for example, hypothetically, or whoever, who do they pursue to get to be the voice of that package? I think will be very interesting.
If this were a street fight, I would be outnumbered 2-1 because I am one that I don't typically watch you'd catch me more on a Sunday night at 8 p.m. tuning into ESPN if it was a good 30 for 30 documentary, more so than Sunday Night Baseball. And that's just kind of been the way my viewing habits have changed over the years for baseball. So I, for one, am not surprised to Elo's point. And candidly, like, there's maybe other programming that looks better at 8 o'clock on ESPN, a channel I frequent more than others. I will say this, though. What I would love to see here, and I don't have the answer to this, so if Rod Manfred's looking for me for advice, I apologize in advance here. This is an opportunity, if you're in Major League, reinvent yourself. Do something different. What else can you do with your package of games? How else can you put this together? What other ideas can you have creatively than just rolling out a game of the week on Sunday night, which we've proven doesn't really work anymore, right? The landscape is different. The games are different. The stars are different. You talk about load management in the NBA. You know, there's bullpen games now. Your starting pitcher isn't on the mound, so you don't know who's there anymore. I think Mike Trout's been hurt, 365 days of the last 365 days. So some of the
there's no more Adam Eaton's play. There's no more Adam Eaton's play in Major League Baseball.
They're all out. I mean, you got Ohtani in but like you've got 2 or 3 marquee teams. So how do you reinvent this? Like, get some creative people in a room and figure out how do you sort of relook at your package, make this something different that other sports aren't doing, that other people aren't doing. I don't have that answer, but I think what Elo is saying is the 8 o'clock on Sunday night used to be appointment television, myself included, back in the day, and now it's just not, for whatever reason. And so how do you do something different when you know what you've been doing isn't working? And ESPN's clearly telling you it wasn't working for them, because if it was, they would have kept the deal, right? So if you're Rob Manfred, get some smart people in a room and figure out, what do we do different? How do we reinvent this package? And then, to Elo's point, find the right player to put it on the TV or the stream for you. But I think if you just roll out 8 p.m. every Sunday night on New Network, I don't know why the results would be any different.
I agree. I would say this. I like the idea of NBC. Go back to more linear to grow the sport. Like, I think cable, get out of cable. That seems to be the trend. My prediction here, I think Netflix is going to get involved. I think Netflix will get the home run derby. That makes a lot of sense for Netflix. They like to do one-offs, right? I think that could be something to watch. I'm fascinated to see the wild card round. I could see NBC To Jeff's point, if they get the Sunday night package, part of that package is they get the wild card round. And I could see that being on NBC. And now all of a sudden, your playoffs maybe are NBC and Fox. I personally think the TBS deal has been bad for baseball. They got to get it back on free television. I think that's why I like the NBA deal. I think the NBA has been hurt by being on cable a lot. I think there are still people that will not have cable, either because they have stream or they just don't have cable and streaming, period. There's still audiences there you can grow from. But you're right, Adam. The thing you got to be careful with, though, they would argue with you that they try to do that by signing the Friday night package to Apple, which I'm sure Jeff could tell you has not gone well. They did this other deal for the Sunday morning games on Roku, I believe it was. And that's kind of like, what? Like, so
I actually like that though, because they do the 11 o'clock start. I love that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it's on Roku. Like, why Roku?
I would
Roku's
argue
a pretty popular platform.
Yeah.
Why not YouTube?
That's a good question. I would argue Apple isn't. I mean, MLS isn't killing on Apple. Maybe it's not a baseball problem, more of an Apple problem. I think
agree with that.
That's the lowest, I think, subscribed streaming service of kind of the major ones, I think, if I have that right. So maybe it's not an MLB problem. It's an Apple problem. We were talking about this on another show that we do, Elo. And I don't know the answer to this question either. I'm not saying you reinvent the game. But how the hell is Savannah Bananas selling out stadiums left and right and getting all this? Like, what are they doing? And I know you can't do banana ball, right? You can't have you catch an out. It's an out kind of thing. Like, I get the wacky rules can't always come into play, but they figured something out to sell their product. And I'm not saying Major League Baseball needs to go to the nth degree, but how do you tap into that audience? Because it sounds like some people are still really interested in watching some fun baseball, right? How do you tap into that?
Yes. Well, and that is a great question, because I think there's a perception that people are not interested in baseball. I don't think that's true. You look at the College World Series in baseball, it drew monster numbers. And I think one of the other caveats of this deal with ESPN is I think you're going to see more College World Series games on ESPN, more college baseball, more college softball. Those are drawing big numbers. So people are interested in baseball. The Savannah Bananas is kind of, I feel like they're like the Harlem Globetrotters of this era, where it's kind of a show and you hear about it, the it thing. Like, I have friends of mine that went down to South Florida this weekend because they were in town. So I think it's like, we got to go see it. There's no urgency. One of the issues MLB has, it's gotten to the point where it's too easy to watch baseball. So it's taken for granted to some extent of, if I don't see this game, that's fine. I'll see it tomorrow. I have every game at my disposal. If I miss this Marlins game on Tuesday, that's okay. I'm going to watch it Wednesday. There's no urgency to watch it. Why do I want to watch it for 3.5 hours when I could just watch highlights, right? Those are the other things. And let's not forget the big beast in the room called football. Football occupies the space and oxygen. So by the time you get to August, people are like, I'll check back with you when October playoffs start. I'm going to watch football. Really, if you look at the baseball calendar, the only time that baseball really has the sport to itself to some extent is around late June to August, because the NBA playoffs are going on. The hockey playoffs are going on. So now you've got a couple of months. Well, then there's some years where the Olympics are going on. So now it used to be that baseball was the end all be all. But now if you're baseball, I think to your point, Adam, you got to maybe reinvent the calendar and try to get some more exclusive exposure time versus sharing the spotlight with football and basketball and think that people are just going to come to you, when in reality they're going to come to they're going to watch the NBA playoffs, they're going to watch the hockey playoffs, they're going to watch March Madness. Like, my God, opening day was today in Japan. How many people actually knew about that? Anybody?
Trace Trelko is the only person I know. And by the way, the slander for the big three, Jeff or Elo, they rule July. What are you talking about? The big three rules July.
But that would be a good, interesting aspect to kind of garner some programming. Take advantage of that window. At least as a starting point. I mean, but you're right. I mean, golf has learned the lesson. Yeah, we ain't playing against football. It's not worth it. So,
look, example, I'm a Marlins fan. I watch the Rays. My viewing habit as far as baseball is I'm watching usually the Marlins and the Rays, and that's it, because I have that at my disposal every night for the most part. But I don't really tune in that much until after the postseason's done with softball, college baseball, NBA, and hockey playoffs. Like, I probably won't lock in. Like, I'll watch opening day, but I'm not going to watch every day until probably we get to June or July. And I think I'm in the majority in that as far as just across the board. Like, I know people are like, well, how can the Rays not sell out Steinbrenner Field? You know why? Because the Tampa Bay Lightning are very popular in Tampa. They're getting ready to watch. They're focused on the Lightning and the hockey playoff pursuit. And oh, by the way, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offseason, you got the NFL draft, and you got that's going on. So
and they're also trying to gouge for the 11,000 seats they have there too. I've looked into that.
You're right. Yeah.
I've looked into that. So
you heard that? Somebody's been searching for tickets.
Yeah.
Jeff Allen's hot take extravaganza coming up
right after this. No, 150 for standing room. No.
Woo!
No.
Oh my!
Not even a chair. Jeez.
Yeah.
Man.
I do require a chair for the money.
At least give you a
right?
stool for that. Kind of loud.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right, so Pat McAfee's name came up earlier, and of course, Pat's a little miffed. I guess at the combine, he was slighted by NFL middle management. He went out of his way to say middle management. So he's going to go wah and say, I'm not going to attend the draft, which to me, I don't care personally. But I find this to be a very interesting grandstanding type of move. Adam, I know you are in the Pat McAfee irritated wagon, much like I am.
Yeah, another example of the story about yourself, right? Like, you could just not go to the draft and not talk about it. You don't need to get on and say, hey, middle management, yada, yada, yada. And apparently this beef started at the NFL Combine. Obviously he's based in Indianapolis. That's where the Combine is at. Him and his crew had a set in Lucas Oil Stadium. He didn't really get into the details. I don't know what happened while they were there, but apparently he felt a little slighted. And then, tried to work something out. I saw some of his rant because I say his name too much and my social media algorithm just goes crazy with it. But I saw some of his rant where he says he's paying the NFL for highlights. He's paying $4 million a year to the NFL so we can show highlights on the show. And, he felt like he was a good partner. But it just sounds like another situation of somebody making the story all about them. And what we don't know is listen, McAfee tries to push the envelope, right? He tries to do some things differently. What was he trying to accomplish at the draft? He didn't specify what it was. I think he calls it the draft extravaganza. I think they've done this in previous years. What was he trying to do, right? And how did that sort of get surreptitiously, thrown apart by the NFL and the quote unquote middle management? So I think for me to be able to feel any bit of sympathy for him, I'd have to understand more about what happened to understand if he was unjustly, vindicated here or whatnot. But to me, it's just another person making himself the story. You can not go to the draft and not tell me about it. That's fine.
I mean, was he trying to have a kegger like they did in Ireland where, he got so...
And perhaps, right? Perhaps the NFL's like, hey, dude, like, you can be here, but do me a solid. Like, let's lay off the sauce. And he's like, oh, Pat McAfee. Like, I don't know what happened there. And then he didn't provide the details. Obviously, smartly, the NFL is not going to pull LeBron and take the bait and go back and forth with him on this one. But again, it's just another story about somebody else. Like, again, he can. There are plenty of shows. Just spoiler it really quickly. The Jeff Allen Sports Talk Show. We will not be at the NFL draft. Just want to tell everybody that right now. We're not going to be there. We'll make that announcement. What? Yes, I'm sorry, Eric. Announce it now. We're not going to be there, along with a million other shows. We're not going to be at the NFL draft. You cannot go and not tell everybody about it. It's perfectly fine.
Elo?
I mean, I'm shocked.
He's devastated now. Look what you did, Adam.
You missed a meeting, Elo. What can I tell you? You missed a meeting. You missed these big updates. I don't know.
I tell you, it's pretty wild. No, listen, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's Pat McAfee. It's a way to get himself airtime. It's doing Raw is not enough. You gotta spit. Was the NFL? Was the draft supposed to be in Indianapolis?
It's in Lambeau Field, Green Bay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Like nobody's going to care. I feel like part of him kind of is glad he's not going to do it because he'll probably do some alternate thing or something. Who knows what he's there thought there. Like I'm not watching Pat McAfee in the NFL draft show. I mean, there's plenty of other options. I'm either watching the ABC version, you got the ESPN version, you got the NFL Network version. There's the Sons of UCF Live version. I mean, there's a lot of versions out there.
So, Elo, you're a wrestling guy. Do you like McAfee on wrestling?
Yes. Yes. Although he's also becoming a bit too much there. I think he's more of a wrestling fan than an analyst type of role. Like there's other guys I feel like they could use more, but I rather have him there than on the sports scene, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'd rather have him there as well rather than the sports scene. Yeah,
Joe Testator, by the way, he's also on wrestling.
I know he's just everywhere. Like we've got to find a way to put the put the lid back on the bottle of Pat McAfee, because he's just everywhere. I think the overexposure bug is going to hit him in a hurry, and I don't mind the passion, and I know his whole group has a shtick. Every show has a shtick, right? Everybody has their thing that they do and the way that they operate, and while that shtick's not for everybody, he also has a tendency to make the story a lot about himself sometimes. And at every now and again, sure, fine, inside baseball of what happened, and okay, cool, it's a cool story, but everything isn't a slight at you, dude. And is another show getting what you wanted, like? Or did you ask for something that nobody's getting? Like it'd be one thing if I was like, hey, I asked for this and they told me no, and they went around and gave it to Jeff Allen Sports Talk. All right, fine. Then you got a gripe. But if you ask for something and they said no and no one else is doing it either, then that just sounds like it's the rule. And you want a rule bent because you think that you're bigger than the rule. And again, without absent the details, that's all I can go off of here.
Maybe that's what Pat McAfee was upset about. He found out that Jeff Allen was going to Lambeau to do the show from Lambeau. Maybe that's
a live version of the Hot Take Variety Hour.
Yes, live from Lambeau Field during the draft. That could be a winner, Jeff. We should
hot takes plenty.
Yeah.
All right. So come the month of May, it'll be time to pour one out for Around the Horn, as the roundtable program will be coming to an end after 23 years, 25. I forget the number, but me in particular, I have not really been big on this show. I don't watch it. If you catch an occasion, like at the gym, it's on the TV, or it's on at the bar. I just always kind of found the points concept that they were doing to be a little bit odd. Of course, Adam will probably spring that up on the next 2-year point where we ringing up points. But I always found it interesting. I always thought that Tony Reali, and tell me if I'm wrong, but whenever there's a attractive female panelist, he rings up the points a lot.
Oh, boy.
Whoa!
Oh, wow.
Whoa!
Hot Take Variety Hour starts early.
Man. Wow!
Next time Courtney Cronin's on, you watch.
What happened? Wow.
Well, first off, we buried the lead that Jeff Allen's watching. He's at a bar at 5 p.m. on a weekday because how was he watching it Around the Horn? We buried the lead on that one. Yeah, not a regular ATH watcher as well. I watched it a lot when it first came on, when it was first new. And I think and this is going to sound terrible, but what are you going to do? I liked it better when there was a core group of panelists, and you kind of knew if it was Kalashaw, Woody Page, Bob Ryan.
When they actually had actual newspaper guys from local markets?
And it was like 6 or 7 guys, people rotating around, and you'd get some form. Now I turn on and I'm like, who the hell's Justin Tinsley? Like, what's he doing? Like, I thought he played for the Pacers. Like, what are we doing here? Like, so I've kind of lost touch with some of the new voices, and a lot of people laud around the horn for developing some of these new voices and faces, which is commendable to begin with. Really, the thing that bums me out is, like, other than Jeff Allen, apparently, which I did not know, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about Tony Reali. He seems like a really likable guy. Seems like somebody people always gravitate towards. Other than Jeff Allen, I feel like he's got a Q rating that's right up there.
You're right. Literally, Jeff Allen's the only one.
Jeff Allen's the only one I've ever had say, like, that Tony Reali. I don't know about him. Everyone seems to
conspiracy theory. Yeah,
seems to like Tony. Seems like a really nice guy.
At least. I mean,
but am I going to miss that show? No. What scares me though is, what does this mean for shows like PTI? I'm a PTI guy. I've been watching PTI, since it rolled out. Right. What does this mean for a show like PTI? And what's that 5 o'clock block now become for ESPN? What's the other show that's there? And then what does Tony Reali do? He was on the Le Batard podcast, throwing out all kinds of wacky stuff, NFL Red Zone, and other opportunities he'd like to try. So what becomes of Reali? Like, he's not a play-by-play guy. He's not an anchor. What is he, and where does he kind of fit in? Again, I like the guy. I root for Tony because he very, very, candidly, like, lucked his way into 2 really cool jobs that I would kill for. But what is his skill? What's his marketability? What does he do next? What network is like, Tony Reali is free? Make a phone call.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, Jeff Allen better be careful with those allegations, or to your point, might be hosted by Tony Reali. I mean, that might be what happens.
Well, Jeff will be at the bar at 5 p.m. apparently, so we might need a fill-in.
What I don't understand, why did they decide to cancel around the horn? It kind of came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was always on at 5 o'clock, but I understand it doesn't get the numbers that PTI gets, but it wasn't like it was doing terrible. It just kind of came out of the blue. And I think the question you brought up is, what is ESPN's plan there? Are they going to extend PTI to an hour? Are they going to put another sports center on instead at 5? Maybe start some early sports at earlier? Do they put NFL programming there? I think that's the big question. They obviously have to have something in mind. What that is remains to be seen. And I think that's what, does ESPN feel like maybe more just what we need, more talking heads, debate shows. You got McAfee's got his show. Your boy Mike Greenberg's got his show. And then you got Stephen A with his show. Maybe they give somebody else the show. So I don't know. That's the only part that surprised me. I was never a big around the horn guy that tuned in. I would casually watch it. I would have it on if I was, so that will be interesting to see what they do in that slot. And I think you're right. Tony Reali, I did hear that. The interesting thing he brought about the Red Zone channel is Scott Hansen currently is negotiating. Yeah. And I believe contract's up. So interesting developments there. That would be a weird trade-off if like Tony Reali is hosting the Red Zone channel. Commercial-free football here, Tony Reali. What?
Or almost commercial-free football is the case is now. Yeah, I kind of forgotten about that. Yeah, so yeah, Scott Hansen. What does the future of the Red Zone look like without him? It sounds like a very real possibility. It sounds like he's pretty hot to go to NBC.
To do what? That's what I want to. Is he going to take over for Maria Taylor, the host at the pregame show? Because if it's not that, then I don't understand the move. What's he going to be hanging out with Matthew Berry there talking fantasy football? Like now, like part of this was obviously he did a very good job in the Olympics and for them.
And he's going to do that again.
And that'll be a part of the package, I would assume. Yeah. But like, as far as leaving the NFL, that's the part I don't get, unless he's going to be like the host of the studio show. But boy, that's going to be weird, isn't it? Like he's kind of become synonymous with the Red Zone channel.
Is it NBA related? Does a Red Zone version of the NBA? I don't know.
It's interesting. I mean, similar to the Manning cast, how much shelf life does a Red Zone style show have? Like, where else does it really work? I mean, the NFL has all the games on the same day. Baseball doesn't have that. NBA doesn't have that, right? So where else does this really work as a concept? I don't disagree that other sports maybe won't want to try it, but I think the NFL has it kind of dialed in the way that they do it. I mean, you may only have 3 NBA games on a night, right? So you just bounce in between all 3 of those games. I think that would be interesting. But again, what similar to Reali, maybe I'm not up to date on Scott Hansen's career, so shame on me, but is he a play-by-play guy? Is he a studio host?
He used to be a reporter. He would be, he used to be a guy that would report like, hey, checking in from Foxborough, his NFL Network's own Scott Hansen about the Patriots and whatever, right? And then he just kind of lucked into the Red Zone channel because Andrew Siciliano used to do the DirecTV version. Sure, well, Andrew Siciliano now is the voice of the Browns on the radio side. So he got into this Red Zone, the non-DirecTV version, and people like me watch it. Like that has changed the habits. Of full disclosure, how I watch the NFL on Sunday. 100%. I watch. That is my go-to now. Is I will watch the NFL Red Zone channel 1 to 8. Occasionally, I'll flip to the 4:25 game if I'm interested, or if the Dolphins are playing locally. Heck, even if the Dolphins are playing locally, if we're having a crappy year, which happens very often, I'll just go to the Red Zone channel. So. To me, that is interesting to see. And there's been speculation that ESPN might buy the rights to the NBA, the NFL network and all that, which could alter the NFL Red Zone channel. Maybe that's why the Scott Hansen thing is in limbo, because if ESPN were to get the rights to the Red Zone channel, maybe they pick their guy. So this should be an interesting offseason to figuring all that out. But you're right. What are these guys going to do, and how will the audience accept them doing a different role? Like I remember a few years ago, I did a lot of softball, and then all of a sudden one day I was doing filling in on soccer, and people are like, "Wait, you're doing soccer?" Like, yeah, I think I could do other sports. Like, really? Like, people like and I think people are going to be kind of like thrown off. Like, wait, he could do what? Like, what's he? Like, so that's going to be interesting.
This is kind of my Tom Rinaldi principle, where his chief role at ESPN was to make you cry on Saturdays, and then all of a sudden he was a sideline guy on Sunday NFL. Like you didn't feel like it was going to work. Now I think he's done a good job with it, right? But what Rinaldi was known for was making somebody cry when he's doing a story about them, and unless he's making Nick Sirianni cry at the pregame speech, that doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, I think he's pulled it off at Fox.
If ESPN does acquire the NFL network, they're going to put Greenberg on NFL Red Zone, right?
Or you get Scott Hansen on that 5 o'clock spot to replace around the horn. Maybe it's NFL Red Zone Daily or something, and he's whip arounds at all the team facilities. I mean, I think Elo's right though. It's gonna if you're ESPN, that's 30 minutes of NFL programming that's staring you in the face. I think I read something about
Rutledge needs another show, right?
Absolutely. I think I read something about turning it into like the Insiders with Adam Schefter and all the other insiders at ESPN, kind of talking about like the gossip in the news, which would rate, unfortunately.
Really? We're going to get is Emily Kaplan going to be involved to break down the hockey trades there?
You get Passan, you get Shams, you get Jeremy Fowler. And I mean, it's going to be kind of, I read that was an option. I have no idea if that's true or not. But an insiders.
Well, that does bring up an interesting point. Because one of the other ideas I thought they might do is they've kind of been doing this quietly on ESPN2 programming is just air their podcasts shows. Like I've seen the Scott Van Pelt podcast with Stanford Steve on ESPN2 pop up, the Windhorse podcast, the NBA Hoops Collective. Yep. Like, I do wonder if that is the future now, especially with ESPN focusing more on direct-to-consumer content. Maybe they just decide, instead of paying to air live TV shows, why don't you just put podcast shows in those slots? That could be the other option.
Very interesting stuff indeed.
Jeff, you need to make some phone calls. We could be on that 5 o'clock slot.
I can get myself available. Jeff, are you going to be?
It takes a half hour. Yeah,
you can do it from the bar if you need to, Jeff. At 5, Elo and I will carry the show for you if you need it.
Oh gosh. Oh, by the way, just noticing that on CBS Sports HQ at the studio desk talking NCAA, BJ Taylor. Very nice for him,
bro. Like the UCF I mean, I tell you what, we may not be a basketball school on the court with some results, but boy, do we know how to produce analysts, don't we? Michael Dono, PJ Taylor.
He's been down there a bunch. Yeah, I've seen him down. Yeah. Even on his Instagram, he was posting pictures the other day of him outside the studio. He's been down there a bunch, calling some games. So
Adam, you better lock up. You better lock up Ben Hayes on an exclusive deal before he's the next one.
That's a good cut. Well, Tony Reali's available, so yeah, it's a bidding war here.
Well, no, remember Tony's doing to your point now, so.
All
right,
you're busy with the hot take variety hour, Jeff. I mean, I got to replace people.
All right. So before we close out, got to do the shameless plugs for your guys' endeavors, and of course, Adam will lead off with you. And by the way, I learned this last week on Sons of UCF Live that Adam is a big Altoids guy.
Big Altoids guy. Always have an Altoid somewhere near me at all times. Big Altoids guy. But you can find out more about my life quirks. Follow us anywhere you do social media at Sons of UCF. Check out our YouTube channel. We have shows featuring these two gentlemen here. Jeff Allen's on a show. Eric Lopez is on a show. So you can catch more of these two gentlemen as well. We also have a website, sonsofUCF.com, a new newsletter that comes out whenever I decide to write one of those. So you can subscribe to the newsletter as well. And of course, the good old-fashioned, age-old, almost outdated these days podcast, which you can find wherever you get your favorite audio content.
All right. By the way, the other mint that you guys did not bring up, lifesavers.
Good call. I got yelled at. Are you too old enough for certs?
I remember certs. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I said certs and like everyone like jumped down my throat. Like, what is that? Did you invent that? I did not. I wish I did. I may be more wealthy than I am now. But certs was a thing back in the day.
It was.
I feel like you would not be on the show with us if you invented that. I feel like you'd be doing a lot better things. Yeah.
I'm going to search how much certs. Yes, it's hard to say.
I'm a lifesaver guy. I also Mentos. That's another one that I dangle in a lot of different stuff. But listen, around the kingdom, I get to yell at Trace because Trace is Trace. I mean, it really needs no explanation why and yell at him. So tune into that every week. We just did this recent episode. I do check out, obviously, blackandgoldbanner.com. I'm going to release this week a couple of features I've been working on, a couple of projects. You realize this week, UCF Baseball is hosting Houston. They're honoring it's alumni weekend for them. This is the 40th year UCF Baseball is a Division I program. 40 years as a Division I program. So I have got a project where I will unveil the all-time 40-man roster for UCF Baseball in the D1 era, plus some of the more memorable and historical games in the 40 years of D1 baseball. So that's going to be on blackandgoldbanner.com, as well as my top 20 UCF softball games at the Plex, because they're going to do their alumni weekend this week when I get to call UCF Iowa State on ESPN Plus. Thursday night, 6 o'clock. Make a note of that. Thursday night, 6, Friday, 6, Saturday at noon. Me and Alex Powers will be on the broadcast. They'll honor the 05 team on Friday night and then the 15 team on Saturday. So a lot of alums for baseball and softball will be on campus this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that a lot. And, of course, D1 softball. My first bracketology will be out this week. Where is UCF going to be? Find out when it comes out.
There you go. Well, guys, thanks as always for being on the Jeff Allen Sports Talk Hot Take Variety Hour. You guys have a good one. Thanks a lot.
Hey, let me know when next time. Let me know when you're in the sports in that bar next time watching the show. We'll do the show from there.
Yeah. Sorry, Tony Reale.